Kyle woke to the sound of wind singing through crystal spires. He was lying on a soft pallet woven from silver moss beneath a ceiling that opened to the sky. Twin moons still hung low, casting rippling light across walls that seemed to breathe. The air smelled clean, sharp, like mountain air after rain. For a moment he forgot where he was. Then memory crashed back. The amphitheater, the elves, the dragon, the impossible words. "You are meant to marry us all." He sat up slowly. His body ached from tension, not injury. Across the room, Ember lay curled near a glowing brazier, eyes half closed but alert. The dragon lifted its head as Kyle moved, letting out a quiet huff that sounded almost like a sigh. Before Kyle could speak, the chamber door shimmered open. Lyra entered, followed by 6 other elf women. They moved with quiet grace, their robes whispering against the floor. Each was different, some tall and stern, others soft-eyed and gentle, but all carried the same luminous stillness. "You slept well," Lyra said. It was not a question. Kyle rubbed his face. "I dreamed of Earth, of my sister's laugh. It felt real." "Dreams are real here," said one of the women, Celine, with eyes like twilight and hair the color of ash. "The spire listens." They gathered around him in a loose circle. No one sat, no one rushed. They simply waited, as if giving him space to remember himself. Finally, Lyra spoke. "You deserve the truth. All of it." She explained that the Aelthari were not just hiding, they were preparing. For generations, they had guarded a secret older than most star systems. The Devourers were not merely a threat. They were a curse, born from the first war between order and chaos. The Devourers fed on harmony, on unity, on peace. They could not be fought with weapons alone. They had to be unmade from within. To do that, the Aelthari had crafted the rite of 7 brides. 7 chosen women would bind their souls together, channeling their combined will into a resonance field capable of shattering the Devourer hive mind. But the ritual required a 7th anchor, someone outside their bloodline, untouched by their history, full of raw, untamed emotion. "Humans are chaos given form," said Maeve, the youngest of the group, her voice bright but serious. "You cry at stories. You fight for strangers. You build gardens in war zones. Your hearts do not follow logic. And that is your power." Kyle shook his head. "I'm just a translator. I fix broken comms and write reports. I'm not special." "You are," said Briar, the stern one from the amphitheater. Her arms were crossed, her gaze sharp. "But that does not mean we trust you." Lyra held up a hand before Kyle could respond. "Briar speaks for many. Our people have been betrayed before. Outsiders have taken our knowledge, our magic, and used it for war. We do not give our trust lightly." Ember rose and padded over to Kyle, pressing its warm side against his leg. The dragon's presence was oddly comforting, like a loyal dog, but with galaxies in its eyes. "Ember chose you," Lyra said softly. "That is not nothing." Over the next few hours they showed him more. They led him through the sky spire, a floating structure built into the clouds, held aloft by ancient songs and living stone. They showed him the star chambers where the brides trained, the memory pools where they stored their history, and the war garden where weapons grew like flowers from the earth. In the war garden, Briar finally spoke to him directly. "You think this is about marriage?" she said, plucking a blade-like petal from a crimson bloom. "It is not. It is about sacrifice. If the ritual fails, we all die. If you falter, the Devourers will reach your world next." Kyle met her gaze. "I don't want anyone to die, especially not because of me." "Then prove you are more than a mistake," she said, and walked away. Back in the central hall, the other brides tried to ease his fear. Neef, with her gentle hands and voice like a lullaby, taught him how to calm his mind using breath and light. Halawan, quiet and watchful, showed him how to read the patterns in the stars, how they shifted when danger neared. Tamsin, the oldest, rarely spoke, but when she did, the others listened. The human heart is loud, Tamsin told him one evening as they watched the moons rise. But loudness can drown out silence or fill it with meaning. We have lived in silence too long. Kyle began to understand. This was not about love in the way he knew it. It was about trust, about weaving something new from old threads and new fire. But doubt still gnawed at him. What if he wasn't enough? What if his human weakness broke the circle? That night he asked Lyra the question burning in his chest. Why did you say I was meant to marry you all? That sounds strange. Lyra smiled faintly. In your tongue, marry means one thing. In ours, the word is closer to bind with purpose. We do not expect you to love us as a husband loves a wife. We ask only that you stand with us, that your will joins ours. Your chaos balances our order. Your hope fuels our resolve. She looked out over the edge of the spire where clouds drifted like ghosts. We have lived so long in control that we forgot how to feel surprise, how to hope without certainty. You bring that back, Kyle thought, of Earth, of protests and poetry, of people helping strangers in disasters, of music played in subway stations for no reason at all. Maybe they were onto something. The next morning, the mood changed. Elowen rushed into the hall, her calm shattered. The outer wards are broken. Devourer scouts have crossed the veil. Silence fell like stone. Lyra's face hardened. How many? 3 ships, small but fast. They are scanning the region. Briar stood immediately. They know we are here. They always come when the rite nears completion. But we are not ready, Celine said, her voice tight. The 7th bride is still missing. Kyle frowned. 7th? I thought there were 6 of you plus me. Lyra turned to him. There are 7 brides. You are the anchor, not a bride. The 7th bride, Kaylee, is gone. She left 3 nights ago to retrieve a sacred stone from the ruins of Valus. She has not returned. Maybe she was captured, Maeve whispered. Or worse, Tamsin added. Kyle's stomach twisted. So the ritual can't happen without her? It can, Lyra said, but it will be weaker, incomplete. And against the Devourers, incomplete is the same as failure. Briar slammed her fist against the wall. We should have never waited. We should have started without her. And risk the bond fracturing? Neem shot back. You know what happened the last time we rushed? Voices rose, tension crackling in the air. For the first time, Kyle saw the Elthari not as perfect beings, but as people. Afraid, divided, desperate. Then Ember growled. Low, deep, vibrating through the floor. Every elf went still. The dragon's golden eyes fixed on the eastern horizon, where a dark smudge stained the sky. They are coming, Elowen breathed. Lyra turned to Kyle. You have a choice now. You can leave. We can erase your memory and send you back to your shuttle. You will wake up thinking it was all a dream. Kyle looked at them, all of them. At Briar's clenched jaw, at Maeve's trembling hands, at Lyra's steady gaze. He thought of Ember, who had never left his side. He thought of Earth, small and fragile in the vast dark. If I stay, he said slowly, what do I do? Lyra's eyes softened. You stand in the center. You hold your heart open. You let your humanity shine even when you are afraid. That is all. Kyle took a deep breath. Then I stay. Briar stared at him for a long moment. Then, grudgingly, she nodded, as alarms began to hum through the spire. The brides moved with new purpose. They gathered crystals, lit sacred fires, and began chanting in a language that made the air shimmer. Kyle stood in the middle of it all, feeling small but not useless. Ember curled around his feet, a living shield. Outside, the sky darkened. The Devourers were coming. And for the first time, Kyle Harris did not feel like a mistake. He felt like he was exactly where he needed to be. Kyle Harris was not supposed to be here. He was just a junior xenolinguist with a worn-out badge and a coffee stain on his uniform sleeve. His job was simple: translate basic trade signals between human freighters and minor alien ports. Nothing glamorous, nothing dangerous, certainly nothing like this. But today, his shuttle had been rerouted. A minor glitch in the transit hub on Xylos Prime sent his vessel to docking Bay 7 instead of Bay 42. By the time he realized the mistake, his scheduled meeting was already missed. Frustrated and tired, he wandered the quiet corridors of the outer ring, hoping to find a transport back to the main concourse. Then he heard it. Music. Not the usual hum of engines or the flat chime of automated announcements. This was something else, soft, layered, ancient. It drifted through an archway veiled in shimmering vines that pulsed with faint blue light. Kyle paused. No signs, no guards, just silence and song. Curiosity pulled him forward. He stepped through the arch and into a hidden amphitheater carved from living crystal. The air smelled of rain and ozone. Above, the sky swirled with twin moons casting silver and violet light over rows of tall, graceful figures. They stood in perfect stillness, their skin pale as moonstone, their eyes glowing faintly like distant stars. Long robes flowed around them, woven with threads that shifted color like oil on water. Elves. Kyle had read about them in old archives. The Elthari, a species so reclusive, most scholars believed they'd vanished centuries ago. Yet here they were, gathered in secret, performing a ritual under the open sky. At the center of the circle stood a woman unlike the others. Her hair fell like liquid night, streaked with strands that shimmered like stardust. Her eyes, deep and knowing, locked onto Kyle the moment he appeared. Beside her, coiled like a shadow-given form, rested a small dragon. Its scales were black as void, but its eyes burned with golden fire. It lifted its head slowly, nostrils flaring as if tasting Kyle's presence in the air. Panic flared in Kyle's chest. He turned to leave, but it was too late. The music stopped. Every single elf turned as one. Their gazes pinned him in place. Silence pressed down like a physical weight. The woman at the center raised her hand, not in threat but in command. The dragon beside her uncoiled, rising to its full height. Still small, no larger than a large dog, but radiating an aura of age and power that made Kyle's breath catch. "The bond seeker has come," she said. Her voice was calm, melodic, yet carried through the amphitheater like thunder wrapped in silk. Kyle opened his mouth to explain, to apologize, to say he was lost, but no sound came out. Two elves stepped forward, their movements fluid and silent. They didn't grab him. They simply stood on either side, guiding him gently but firmly toward the center circle. Kyle's legs moved on their own as if pulled by invisible strings. As he neared, the dragon, Ember, though he didn't know its name yet, sniffed the air near his chest, then let out a low, rumbling purr. The woman's expression softened just slightly. "You are human," she said, not as a question but as a fact long awaited. Kyle nodded, finally finding his voice. "I didn't mean to intrude. My shuttle was misrouted. I just heard the music and—" "The music called you," she interrupted gently. "It always does." She turned to the assembly. "By the law of the seventh vow, any outsider who witnesses the rite of unity must either join the bond or be released from this world." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some elves looked hopeful, others wary. One, a stern-faced woman with braided silver hair, narrowed her eyes at Kyle as if he were a disease. Kyle's stomach dropped. "Join the bond? What does that mean?" The woman, Lyra, though he would learn her name later, met his gaze without flinching. "It means you were not lost, Kyle Harris of Earth. You were found, and you are meant to marry us all." The words hit him like a physical blow. Marry them all? There were dozens of them, maybe hundreds. "That's impossible," he whispered. "Not to the Althari," Lyra said. "Our unions are not as yours. We do not seek love in the way humans do. We seek balance, strength, resonance. And for the first time in 1,000 cycles, the stars have sent us a human, unbound, uncorrupted, full of chaotic light." She gestured to Ember, who stepped closer and nudged Kyle's hand with its snout. The touch sent a warm pulse through his arm, not painful but strangely calming. "Ember senses your truth," Lyra said. "You carry no malice, no hidden agenda, only confusion and courage." Kyle looked around at the sea of silver eyes watching him. He thought of his tiny apartment back on Mars Colony, his half-finished report on Kentari trade dialects, the lukewarm coffee waiting in his mug. None of that mattered now. What happens if I say no? He asked. Lyra's face remained serene, but her voice grew heavy. Then the law demands your silence. Forever. The implication hung in the air. Death. But before fear could take root, Ember let out a soft chirr and pressed its head against Kyle's leg. The dragon's warmth grounded him. Somehow he knew this creature wouldn't let harm come to him. Not yet. Why me? Kyle asked, voice barely above a whisper. Because the Devourers are coming, Lyra said, her tone shifting to something darker. They have consumed 3 star systems already. They feed on order, on harmony. They cannot understand chaos, emotion, sacrifice, and humanity. Humanity is chaos made flesh. She stepped closer. We need your kind's fire. Not your weapons. Your heart. Your unpredictability. Our ritual requires a 7th anchor, one not born of our bloodline. An outsider, a human, Kyle swallowed hard. So this wedding, it's not really a wedding? It is a binding, she corrected. A merging of wills. You would not be our husband in the human sense. You would be our keystone, the one who holds the circle together when the storm hits. The stern elf from earlier stepped forward. He is fragile, Lyra. A single breath could break him. What if he fails? Then we all fall, Lyra replied without hesitation. But the visions were clear. Ember saw him in the dream flame. The stars aligned for his arrival. Kyle looked down at the dragon. Ember blinked slowly, then let out a puff of warm, golden smoke that curled around Kyle's wrist like a promise. Something inside him shifted. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't a soldier. But he was here. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. What do I have to do? He asked. Lyra smiled for the first time. It was like watching dawn break over a frozen sea. For now, you stay. You rest, you learn. The full rite cannot begin until all 7 brides are present, and one is still missing. She turned and began walking toward a path lined with glowing trees. Come, the Sky Spire awaits. Kyle hesitated only a second before following. The elves parted for him like water. Ember patted at his heels, its tail flicking gently. As they left the amphitheater behind, Kyle glanced back once. The crystal seats were already fading into mist, as if the place had never been real. But the weight in his chest told him otherwise. He had walked into a wedding by accident. Now, he was part of something far older, far stranger, and far more dangerous than he could imagine. And the galaxy, it seemed, was counting on a man who still forgot to pay his rent. The Devourer scouts never reached the Sky Spire. A storm of living lightning, summoned by Tamsin and Selene, ripped through the clouds and tore the enemy ships apart before they could fire a single shot. The Elthari celebrated, but Lyra did not smile. They were only testing, she said, her voice low. Scouting. The real attack will come when we are weakest, during the ritual. Kyle understood. They had bought time, not safety. That evening, as the others prepared defenses, Lyra led Kyle to a quiet chamber deep in the spire's roots. The walls here were rough, unpolished, covered in ancient carvings of dragons and stars. In the center sat a pool of still water, black as ink. This is the trial of echoes, Lyra said. To stand with us, you must prove your spirit is strong enough to hold the bond. Ember will guide you. The dragon stepped forward and dipped its snout into the pool. The water rippled, then glowed gold. I do not fight, Kyle said. I translate. I listen. This is not a fight of weapons, Lyra replied. It is a journey into your own soul. Ember will show you what you carry inside. If you face it without turning away, you are worthy. Kyle looked at the dragon. Ember blinked slowly, then nudged his hand. He took a breath and stepped into the pool. The world dissolved. Suddenly, he was not in the spire. He stood in a ruined city under a blood-red sky. Buildings lay shattered, smoke curled from broken streets. But amid the wreckage, a woman sang to a child, her voice trembling but clear. Kyle recognized the lullaby. It was one his mother used to sing. Then the scene shifted. He was on a frozen battlefield, snow falling on the bodies of soldiers. One man, bleeding and cold, shared his last piece of bread with an enemy. They died holding hands. Again, the vision changed. Now he was in a hospital on Mars Colony. A young doctor worked for 3 days straight, saving strangers while her own home burned in a riot. She never stopped. Scene after scene unfolded. Humanity at its worst and its best. Wars, lies, greed, but also kindness, courage, art, forgiveness. Moments no alien would understand, but that made humans human. Through it all, Ember walked beside him, silent but present. Then came the hardest vision. Kyle stood in his own memory. He was 10 years old, hiding in a closet while his father shouted at his mother. He had stayed quiet. He had done nothing. For years he carried that shame, the boy who did not speak up. Tears filled his eyes. "I was weak," Ember turned to him. The dragon's golden eyes held no judgment, only understanding. Then in a voice that was not sound but feeling, Ember showed him something new. The next day that same boy had held his mother's hand and told her he loved her. He had drawn her a picture of the sun. Small, quiet, but real. Strength was not always loud. Kyle fell to his knees in the vision, sobbing, not from shame but from release. When he opened his eyes, he was back in the chamber. The pool was calm again. Lyra watched him, her expression unreadable. "What did you see?" she asked. "Everything," Kyle whispered. "The good, the bad. The messy truth," Lyra nodded. "The Althari seek perfection. We erase flaws. We smooth edges. But your people, you carry your scars like stars. You let them shine." She touched his cheek. "Your eyes have changed." Kyle looked into a polished stone on the wall. His irises, once brown, now held flecks of gold, like embers. The dragon let out a soft churr and curled around his feet. When they returned to the main hall, the other brides gathered around. They saw the change in him. Even Briar's hard gaze softened. "He passed," Lyra announced. Celine smiled. "Then the bond can hold." But their relief was short-lived. Aloan rushed in, her face pale. "Kale's signal has returned, but it is weak. She is alive but trapped in the Devourer hive on Zenthis Ridge." Silence. Zenthis Ridge was a dead world, poisoned by Devourer biomatter. Nothing grew there. Nothing survived. "She must have been captured while returning with the stone," Maeve said, her voice shaking. "We cannot perform the ritual without her," Neve added. "The circle is broken." Briar stood tall. "Then we go get her." Lyra shook her head. "It is a trap. They know we will come. Then we spring it," Briar shot back. "We cannot wait." Every hour Kale fades. Kyle stepped forward. "I have an idea." All eyes turned to him. "On Earth," he said, "we used to say the best way past a guard is not to fight him but to make him look the other way." He explained his plan. Human freighters often carried old cloaking tech, jammed, patched together but functional. If they could find one, they could sneak in, not with magic or might, but with trickery. "You would risk yourself for one of us?" Briar asked, surprised. "You are risking everything for my world," Kyle replied. "It is the least I can do." Lyra studied him, then nodded. "We will go, but only a small team. Too many will draw attention." In the end, it was decided. Lyra would ride Ember. Kyle would pilot the skiff. Briar and Aloan would come as fighters. The others would stay to guard the spire. They found a derelict human freighter in the lower docks, abandoned but with a working engine and a half-charged cloaking field. Kyle spent hours rewiring the system, his hands moving with a confidence he did not know he had. Ember watched from the corner, tail flicking in approval. As they prepared to leave, Tamsin approached Kyle. She placed a small crystal in his palm. "This will show you the way," she said, "but only if your heart is true." He tucked it into his pocket. The journey to Zenthis Ridge was silent. The skiff hummed through dead space, cloaked in shadow. Below them, the planet looked like a wound, black veins spreading across gray rock, pulsing with sickly green light. "The hive is in the crater," Aloan said, pointing to a massive scar in the earth. Briar checked her weapons, blades grown from the war garden humming with energy. "Stay behind me," she told Kyle. He nodded. They landed on the edge of the crater. Ember carried Lyra down in a single glide, landing without a sound. The dragon's scales darkened to match the ash, its golden eyes scanning the darkness. The hive rose before them, a towering mass of flesh and metal, breathing like a living lung. Tendrils writhed at its base, tasting the air. Kyle activated the cloaking field. It flickered, weak but enough. They moved like ghosts through the hive's outer layers. The air stank of decay and ozone. Strange sounds echoed. Clicks, whispers, screams that were not human. Deep inside, they found Kale. She was suspended in a web of black fibers, her silver skin dull, her eyes closed. A thick tube fed into her neck, draining her light. Around her, devourer drones worked, their insect-like bodies clicking as they harvested her essence. "They are using her to power something," Aloan whispered. Briar raised her blade, We cut her free. Now. Wait, Kyle said softly. He looked at the crystal Tamsin had given him. It glowed faintly, pulsing in time with Kale's heartbeat. Then he understood. They are not just draining her, he said. They are trying to copy her, to understand the Elthari soul so they can destroy the ritual before it begins. Lyra's face went white. If they succeed, they will create a mimic, a false bride. The bond would shatter from within, Kyle thought fast. Fighting would alert the hive. Running would leave Kaylee to die. Then he remembered the trial, the power of human emotion. I have another idea, he said. He pulled a small device from his belt, the comms unit from his old job. It was outdated, but it could broadcast on open frequencies. What are you doing? Briar hissed. Giving them something they cannot digest, Kyle replied. He activated the unit and began feeding it raw human memories. Songs, laughter, a child's first steps, a grandmother's recipe, a soldier's letter home, all the messy, beautiful noise of humanity. The signal pulsed through the hive. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the drones froze. Their clicking turned to static. Their movements became jerky, confused. The hive itself shuddered as if choking. It is working, Elowen breathed. They cannot process it. Now, Lyra said. Briar leapt forward, her blade slicing through the web. Kyle caught Kale as she fell, her body cold but breathing. Ember roared, a sound like stars colliding, and unleashed a blast of golden fire. The hive screamed as the flames spread, not burning but unraveling the devourer matter like thread. They ran. Back to the skiff, with Kale limp in Kyle's arms. The hive collapsed behind them, consumed by its own confusion. As they lifted off, Kyle looked down at the dying world. He had not fought with a sword. He had fought with a song, and it had worked. Back at the Sky Spire, the other brides wept with relief as they tended to Kale. She would live, but she was weak. The ritual would have to wait one more day. That night, Briar found Kyle on the edge of the spire, staring at the stars. You did not act like a human today, she said. Kyle smiled faintly. I acted like myself. Briar was quiet for a long time. Then she knelt and placed a hand over his heart. This chaos you carry, it is not weakness. It is a weapon. She stood and walked away, but not before adding, you have my trust. Kyle Harris. Ember curled beside him, warm and steady. Above, the twin moons shone brighter than ever. The circle was whole again, and the real battle was yet to come. Dawn came quiet over the Sky Spire. The air hummed with energy, not from machines, but from the Althari themselves. After Kale's return, the 7 brides had spent the night in deep meditation, weaving their strength back together. Kyle watched from a distance, wrapped in a soft cloak Neef had given him. His body ached from the rescue, but his mind was clear. Ember lay beside him, eyes closed but breathing steady. The dragon had not left his side since they returned. Lyra approached as the first light touched the spire's highest peak. She will join the rite, she said simply. Her spirit is bruised but not broken. Kyle nodded. Good. You saved her, Lyra added. Not with force but with memory. With noise. With heart. He looked down at his hands. I just played a song. To the devourers, that song was a storm, she said. They feed on silence, on order. Your chaos drowned them. Before Kyle could reply, a low rumble shook the spire. Not thunder. Not wind. The ground trembled again, deeper this time. Elowen appeared at the archway, her face tight. They are coming. Not scouts. The queen. Silence fell like a curtain. The brides gathered quickly. No panic, only purpose. They moved to the central platform, the same place where Kyle had first stood as an intruder. Now he was part of the circle. Briar handed him a thin band of silver metal. Wear this. It will help you hold the bond. Kyle slipped it onto his wrist. It warmed instantly, humming with a soft pulse that matched his heartbeat. Kaylee, pale but standing, gave him a weak smile. Thank you, she whispered. He wanted to say it was nothing, but it was everything. Lyra raised her hands. The ritual begins at moonrise. We have hours. Use them well. Kyle spent the time walking the spire's edge, thinking of Earth. He remembered his sister's voice, his mother's cooking, the smell of rain on dry soil. He held those memories close, like armor. Meanwhile, the brides prepared the final stage. They placed 7 crystals in a circle, each glowing with a different color. In the center, they laid a stone tablet covered in ancient script, the vow of unity. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the twin moons rose together, casting silver and violet light over everything. The brides took their places. Lyra, Celine, Maeve, Briar, Niamh, Elowyn, Kale, each stood at a point of the circle, hands raised, eyes closed. Kyle stepped into the center. Ember coiled around the outer edge, a living ring of shadow and flame. Lyra opened her eyes. "Are you ready?" Kyle took a deep breath. Yes, the chanting began, soft at first, then rising like a tide. The words were not in any human language, but Kyle felt their meaning in his bones. They spoke of balance, of sacrifice, of joining light and dark. As the chant grew, the crystals flared to life. Beams of color shot upward, meeting in the sky to form a dome of shimmering energy. Then pain hit him, sharp, sudden, like his chest was being split open. He gasped, falling to his knees. The band on his wrist burned hot. "Do not fight it," Lyra called over the rising hum. "Let it in." Kyle forced himself to breathe. He stopped resisting, and in that moment he felt it. The bride's thoughts, their fears, their hopes. He felt Lyra's loneliness, Briar's rage, Maeve's joy, Kaylee's pain. It was overwhelming, like standing in a storm of emotions, but he held on because he remembered who he was. A human, messy, flawed, full of love and doubt and stubborn hope. He opened his heart and the bond snapped into place, golden. Light erupted from his chest, weaving through the colored beams, tying them all together. The dome above pulsed once, then exploded outward in a wave of pure resonance. Far below, the Devourer fleet shuddered to a halt. On the bridge of the Queen's vessel, the hive mind screamed a human emotion, raw, unfiltered, chaotic, flooded their network. Laughter mixed with grief, courage tangled with fear, forgiveness clashed with anger. It was too much, too real. Their systems began to fail. Back at the spire, Kyle collapsed. The brides fell to their knees, exhausted but alive. The circle held, but the victory was short. A new sound cut through the air, a deep, guttural roar that shook the stars. The Queen was coming herself. Lyra helped Kyle to his feet. "She will not let us win so easily." Briar drew her blades. "Then we meet her." No one argued. They knew this was always coming. Ember rose, scales darkening to night black, eyes blazing like suns. The dragon let out a challenge cry that echoed across the clouds. Kyle looked at the band on his wrist. It glowed steady now, tied to the bond. "What do I do?" he asked. "Stand with us," Lyra said, "and be human." They flew down from the spire on wings of light and wind. The brides rode on currents of magic, their robes trailing stardust. Kyle clung to Ember's back. The dragon's muscles coiled tight beneath him. Below, the Devourer Queen rose from her ship, a monstrous thing of bone and shadow taller than mountains. With 1,000 eyes and a mouth that dripped black fire, she spoke without sound, her voice entering their minds like ice. "You think noise can stop us? We will silence you. We will unmake your song." Briar charged first, blades flashing. But the Queen swatted her aside like a fly. Niamh and Celine wove shields of light, but they shattered on contact. Kyle's heart pounded, then he remembered it was never about fighting her. It was about showing her what she could never understand. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the old comms unit. It was cracked but still working. "Ember," he said, "get me close." The dragon hesitated only a second before diving straight at the Queen's face. Wind roared in Kyle's ears. The Queen's eyes fixed on him, filled with contempt. At the last second, Ember banked hard and Kyle leapt, not at her, but into the air before her. He activated the comms unit and played the most human thing he could think of. His sister's voice, singing a lullaby, then a child's laugh, then a recording of rain on a tin roof, then a soldier saying, "I forgive you," to his enemy. The Queen froze. Her 1,000 eyes blinked in confusion. Her form flickered as if losing shape. The hive mind behind her shrieked in disarray. Kyle kept playing. He added more. Wedding vows, a mother's promise, a poet reading under streetlights. All the small sacred moments that made life worth living. The Queen staggered back, clutching her head. Stop this noise." But Kyle did not stop. He opened his heart wider, and the bond responded. The 7 brides joined him, their voices rising in harmony with his memories. Their light wrapped around the Queen, not to burn, but to show her what she had lost, what she could never have. Love that asks for nothing. Hope that lives in darkness. Chaos that creates beauty. The queen let out a final, broken wail and dissolved into ash. Her fleet collapsed, drifting lifeless in the void. Silence returned, but it was a different silence now. Peaceful. Kyle floated in the air, exhausted as Ember caught him gently in its claws. Below, the brides gathered, tears on their silver cheeks. Briar looked up at him, her stern face softened by awe. "You did not conquer her," she said. "You reminded her she was alone." Lyra reached him as Ember landed. She placed a hand on his shoulder. "The bond is complete." Kyle looked at the band on his wrist. It no longer glowed, but he could still feel the connection. Warm, steady, alive. He had not become a warrior. He had become a bridge. And as the twin moons shone down on the quiet sky, Kyle Harris, the junior xenolinguist with a coffee stain on his sleeve, knew he had done exactly what the universe needed. Nothing more. Nothing less. Peace settled over the sky spire like a soft blanket. The devourer threat was gone, not destroyed, but unmade. Their hive mind had shattered under the weight of human emotion, scattering their fleet into silence. The galaxy would not see them again for generations, if ever. Kyle stood at the edge of the spire watching the twin moons dip below the horizon. His body was tired, but his spirit felt lighter than it had in years. The silver band on his wrist no longer hummed, but he could still feel the bond. Quiet now, like a heartbeat shared between friends. Ember lay beside him, scales shimmering with faint starlight. The dragon had grown since the ritual, not in size, but in presence. Its golden eyes held ancient wisdom, yet it still purred when Kyle scratched behind its horns. Lyra joined him, her robes glowing softly in the dawn light. "You are thinking of home," she said. Kyle nodded. "I wonder if anyone noticed I was gone." "They will," she replied. "And soon, they will know why." She explained that the resonance wave from the ritual had not only stopped the devourers, it had sent a signal across the galaxy. A signal that carried the truth. Humanity was not weak. They were the missing piece. The spark that could reignite hope in dying civilizations. Already, distant worlds were reaching out. Not with weapons, but with questions. With respect. Earth would no longer be ignored. Kyle smiled faintly. "So I go back as a hero?" "You go back as yourself," Lyra said. "That is enough." Over the next few days, the brides prepared for his departure. They did not weep or cling. Their goodbye was quiet, full of meaning. Celine gave him a vial of starlight water. "Drink it when you feel alone. It will remind you of us." Maeve wove him a scarf from moon thread. "It will keep you warm in cold places." Neve pressed a small stone into his palm. "It holds a lullaby. Just hold it close." Briar was last. She stood before him, arms crossed, but her eyes were kind. "You fought like a true Aeltheri," she said. "Not with blades, but with truth." Then she did something unexpected. She bowed. Kyle's throat tightened. "Thank you." Kaylee, still recovering but stronger each day, touched his arm. "You gave me back my voice. I will never forget that." Elowen simply nodded, her quiet strength saying more than words. Tamsin placed a hand on his head. "The universe chose well," she whispered. Finally, Lyra stepped forward. She did not give him an object. Instead, she placed her forehead against his. A gesture of deep trust among her people. "You are always welcome here," she said. "Not as a bond seeker, as family." Kyle closed his eyes. "I will come back. We know." Ember nudged his hand, ready to fly. They soared from the spire one last time, dragon and human against the rising sun. Below, the 7 brides stood in a line, their light joining into a single beam that guided him home. The journey back to the transit hub was quiet. Kyle sat on Ember's back, wrapped in Maeve's scarf, the stone from Neve warm in his pocket. He thought of everything that had happened, the fear, the confusion, the impossible choice. He had not asked for any of it. But he would not change a single moment. When they reached the hub, Ember landed gently near Docking Bay 42, the place he was supposed to be all along. Kyle slid off the dragon's back. "You do not have to leave," he said softly. Ember blinked slowly, then nudged him toward the shuttle. "You are staying?" The dragon let out a low rumble, then curled around the base of a nearby pillar. Its eyes said everything. "I will wait." Kyle understood. Ember was not just his companion. It was a guardian now, for him, for Earth, for the bond between species. He walked into the shuttle, heart full. Back on Mars Colony, nothing had changed. His apartment was the same. His coffee mug still sat on the desk. His report on Kantari dialects was still unfinished. But he was different. He submitted his report the next day. Then he requested a new assignment. Not as a translator, but as a cultural liaison. Earth Command was confused at first. Then they received the first official message from the Althari High Council. It was short. "We recognize humanity as kin. We offer alliance. We ask only that Kyle Harris speak for your world." News spread fast. Humans had done the impossible. They had earned the trust of an elder race. Not through war, but through heart. Kyle did not give speeches. He did not wear medals. He simply sat in quiet rooms with alien delegates and listened. He shared stories. He asked questions. He reminded everyone, human and alien alike, that strength came in many forms. Months passed. One evening, as he walked home from work, he saw a small shape waiting by his door. Ember. The dragon had grown even more. Its scales now dusted with tiny points of light, like stars caught in night. It carried a message tied to its claw, a scroll sealed with silver wax. Kyle opened it. The handwriting was Lyra's. "The stars are quiet, but we remember your song. Come when you are ready." He smiled. That night he packed a small bag. Not much. Just clothes, his sister's old music player, and the gifts from the brides. As he stepped outside, Ember lowered its head. Kyle climbed on. They rose into the sky, not as stranger and beast, but as friends. Below, Earth turned, small and bright in the dark. Ahead, the stars waited. Kyle Harris was no longer just a xenolinguist. He was the bridge, the human who attended an alien wedding and became part of something greater than himself. And though he never asked for it, he knew now that sometimes the universe chooses you, not for your strength, but for your heart. The end.